Hey guys, welcome to our third podcast on Squatch Encounters, and we have a third guest. I'm very grateful to have Amy Boo on here.
Hello. How are you, Toby?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, thanks.
So, just to kind of um give a short summary of kind of who you are to the listeners, do you mind?
Oh, no, sure. Well, I am Amy Boo. I live in Youngstown, Ohio. I am a teacher, a grant writer, editor, do lots of different things. And I am really interested in Bigfoot. So am involved in a couple of different groups. I do a lot of research on my own. I'm writing a book, just all kinds of things. But as far as what takes up most of my time besides work, I would definitely say that is anything to do with Bigfoot.
Interested. Now, I think what we'll start out with is how you fell down the rabbit hole, and if anyone doesn't know what that means, it's basically how you started out, how you kind of first got interested into Bigfoot.
Sure. Well, I had heard of Bigfoot, like who hasn't heard of Bigfoot, right? But my knowledge or interest, I guess, was limited to, reading or not reading, doing a report about the Loch Ness Monster when I was a kid. And I remember there was one book in the library and it also had Bigfoot in it, but I didn't even read that part about Bigfoot. But, I grew up watching In Search of, and I saw Harry and the Hendersons and that kind of thing. But I never in a million years thought that Bigfoot was an actual possibility, so it wasn't on my radar. It wasn't something I thought about. And I really hadn't thought about it much, if at all, since I was younger. But in 2012, I had a really strange experience. And I'm just going to say right now that even though I'm really interested in the topic and I spend a lot of time on it, I'm not somebody who is 100% convinced that they are real. I still have a healthy bit of skepticism, but there are days when, I'm more convinced than other days.
Yeah.
But so I'll just say that. But so I had an experience in 2012 where, long story short, I was a passenger in a car, and this was in Ohio, so that made it even stranger because if there is such a thing as Bigfoot, I wouldn't think it would be in Ohio. So, anyway, though, this is where I saw this. So, I was a passenger in a car going over a body of water, and I saw something along the shoreline. It was very tall and very wide and dark, and it was holding onto a tree, looking out at the water and, facing toward where these birds were flying around. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what the birds had drawn my eye over in that direction. So I look at this, whatever it was, and as we're getting closer to being like parallel with it, I just kept staring at it because what it looked like to me is what I would think Bigfoot looked like. And it definitely was not a cardboard cutout or anything like that because it moved. But the reason I cannot say what it is because it was about 100 yards away. And
Yeah.
I just don't know. But, you know, you wish you could stop time. You wish you could like rewind and stop there and get a
Mm-hmm.
better look at it. But we were on the bridge. There's traffic going. You can't get into that area because it's um, run by the Department of Homeland Security. It's the city's water supply in Mahoning County, outside of Youngstown, which is just
Mm-hmm.
crazy. But it startled me enough and looked to me like what I would think Bigfoot would look like, that I yelled out, I think I just saw Bigfoot. And I called my mom, and she was very nice to me, and she was kind of laughing, but like, oh, okay, I believe you. And I'm like, oh, I don't even believe myself, because you're like, oh, it can't be, that's stupid. But it caught my attention so much that I couldn't stop thinking about it. And over the next days and weeks and months, I
Mm-hmm.
started looking into it, and I started reading about it, and I started searching about Bigfoot being in Ohio, of all places. And I very quickly found out that not only were there lots of sightings in Ohio and the rest of the United States, but there were sightings right around where I had seen this
Yeah.
thing. So that's what definitely started me down the rabbit hole.
How long did you get a look at the figure?
Um, we were in a moving car. I would say just maybe 10 seconds. I'm not really sure. I'm not good about things like that, but it was further away and we were getting closer to it. But still, when we were at the closest point, I'd say it was about a football field away.
Yeah. That's still a long time compared to what people have, witnessed. And that's a long time for you to get a long, good look at it. I mean, it didn't just happen in a snap of fingers. You actually had
Right,
just a little bit of thinking time.
right. But it was like so shocking. Like I would just kept looking at it and looking at it, craning my neck, try to, because it's not something you would think you were going to see.
Yeah. And most of the times, when this stuff like this happens, you kind of think about it after it happens. Like, you're kind of in
Mhm,
shock when you see these things.
mhm. I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good story. There are tons of, people that see these things, inside of a vehicle, that and road crossings.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Now I believe that you're a consistent researcher and, you out in the woods all the time. Have you had any more like special experiences happen?
I have. I haven't been out in the woods as much as I'd like to be lately just because I've been sick and I'm recovering now. But when I can get out there, I'm out there.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have had some things. Again, nothing that I can say, okay, that's the smoking gun. It was absolutely Bigfoot. I'm a believer. But I've had some strange things happen. The biggest one is it took place, I think it was 2018. My brain isn't working very well. And I was at an expedition with some friends, and we were in southern Ohio. And we had been there several days, I think at least 4 days at that point. The night before this took place, I had led a team through a patch of woods that had had a history of sightings of Bigfoot over several years. And I led them through it. We didn't really see anything, didn't have anything happen, but it took quite a long time, just kind of meandering through there, stopping, talking, looking through fleers and all that stuff. We
Yeah.
got to a clearing, and we were in a clearing that ran downhill. It was a power line cut, and it ran downhill, ended or was stopped at a creek that had a pretty decent bank, what that went up, like embankment that went up
Yeah.
that we couldn't get down to very easily at all if we had tried. And then on the other side of that creek, it went pretty steeply uphill um, again. So we came out the one side, and on the other side, up on the other hill, there was a seated team. So we could see them in the distance, their lights and everything, and they could
Yeah.
see us. But we did we did see catch some kind of a thermal hit in the woods across from that power line cut, but couldn't tell what it was or anything like that, and didn't make anything of it. But
Yeah.
and I just say that because the next night, actually, myself and my fiance, we were going to leave because we had come a few days or so early, and it was rainy, like drizzly rainy, and I was tired, and I'm like, I think we're going to get going instead of leaving in the morning because we had our tent, and I've camped in the rain and snow and everything, but I just kind of wanted to get a shower and get
Yeah.
out of there. But my friend who was putting on the expedition, he asked if we would stay because he said there were still teams going out, and there was a couple that wanted to stay and be a seated team. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So we stayed. We took them up to that same area where the other group had been the night before. And pretty quickly, we had some kind of weird stuff happening. Like, we were sitting, well, two of us were sitting on the tailgate of a truck, and the other two had chairs, and it was just real fine, misty drizzle. So we were still out,
Mhm.
had our raincoats or whatever on. But pretty quickly, we smelled kind of a weird smell. And that's the only time I've ever smelled anything funny when I was out actively looking for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Um, we heard some what sounded like footsteps over to the left, but down the little pathway there was a cemetery, and I'm like, okay, I want to look for Bigfoot, but I don't want to I don't want to go ghost hunting or anything like that. That scares me. So I'm like, I'm not going over there. So we were
Yeah.
laughing about that, and we were just kind of hanging out. Well, the one gentleman I was sitting next to, he was basically just there to humor his wife, who really wanted to, get into Bigfoot, but he wasn't into it at all. But he was sitting there and he was looking through their FLIR Scout and
Mhm.
looking down that power line cut down to that creek. And he all of a sudden just like jumps up and like hit his head on the roof of the truck, and he's like, what is that, what is that, what is that? And I was just like, what are you talking about? And he obviously was very excited. He's like, here, look at this. And I didn't want to take the FLIR because, like, in my head, like if you're out bird watching, you don't want to take your eyes off that bird or you're not going to find it again, right? But he's like,
Yeah.
no, you got to see this. So I looked, and it took me a minute because usually when I had looked through FLIRs before, they would be white hot. So whatever had the
Yeah.
heat signature would be white. Well, this was turned opposite, so it was black hot. So I was a little bit confused, and I look and I saw this very strange figure walking down the power line cut, and
Mhm.
you could tell that it was going at a clip, and it was getting smaller, so it was going away from us. um, and it looked like nothing I would have thought, looking through that. I've
Yeah.
seen lots of people through there, other animals through there, and this was just a really big figure. And I'll tell you in a minute what it kind of looked like to me. But so we kept putting it back and forth to each other and watching it, and we asked the other two people there if they wanted to, and they're like, no, no, you guys just keep a look at it. And we saw it go over, I saw it because I had it at the time, go over that embankment down to where that creek was. And that was really weird because if a person was going to do that, you'd like have to turn around and kind of rappel down there a little bit. It's not like that far, but it wouldn't be easy like you could just go over it. So immediately, like after this happened, we're all excited. I get on the walkie and I tell the team that was over on the other side, we just caught something on the thermal. There's something over here. So they
Yeah.
start running through the woods because they were
Oh,
trying to
jeez.
get to the opening. So they finally get there, but by that time they couldn't see anything. We couldn't see anything. But the leader of the expedition wanted us to wait before we did anything else until they got back, just for safety and everything. And here's me, like, I
Yeah.
really wanted to go down there. Like, I'm like, I want to go see, I want to go try to follow it. And they're like, no, you need to wait. And I'm like, okay. So it didn't, it took at least 10 minutes, if not longer, because they had to run back through the woods and get in their cars and come over. I mean, it wasn't that far of a drive, but they had
Yeah.
to get to the car. So we waited for them. Well, when they got here, we, by then it was gone. But, oh, and I forgot to say, in the meantime, while we were waiting for them to get here, we did send Lester, my fiance, we had him to, walk down the power cut a little bit because both the other gentleman and I remembered when we first saw it, it was right near the base of the first tower,
Mhm.
and that still had residual heat in it. So that was kind of like a marker that we could make a comparison. So we sent
Oh.
Lester down there, and by the time he got to that area, and we're going from memory, so I have to realize that, but we're going from memory, but we sent him to where we thought it had been, and he just looked so small. we're like, get back, get back up here, because it was like startling how much smaller he looked. So he comes back up. The other team gets there. We send my friend, we call him Big Kevin because he's 6'9", and
Uh,
we send him down there. And when he gets to that same spot, I've never had this happen before in my life, but I really felt like I was going to faint because like my knees buckled. I had to grab onto somebody because it was just so crazy how small he was in comparison to what we saw,
jeez.
at least in our memory. You know what I mean? And there's a
Yeah.
lot of excitement stuff, but we're like, he doesn't look anything like this thing looked. And the other gentleman, the same thing, said the same thing. So we did like some different tests where we would have people go stand down there and they would like lift up three fingers or two fingers, and we could tell,
Mhm.
like we could see those were people. They had clothes on. We could see their hats. We could see their fingers. There were deer behind us. We could see them. So what this was just so different than the people that we saw. So we
Yeah.
start trying to justify it, like, could it have been somebody in a raincoat? Could it have been this? Could it have been that? And nothing, you know, we nothing matched what we thought we had seen or what we did see. So the leader of the expedition, like right away, had myself and the other gentleman like leave each other. So
Mhm.
they went back to camp. Lester and I had already packed up and everything, so we were actually gonna like drive home afterwards. So we got a hotel. Like that was how weird and crazy this was, that we're like,
Yeah.
okay, we're gonna spend the money on a hotel so we could stick around.
I
So
would.
yeah, right. So right away, and we had people went down, tried to find prints, but it was like really tall grasses that were matted down. Couldn't find anything, that night. So I went back to the hotel. I wrote everything down that I could remember, and I drew a picture of what I thought this looked like. And I drew a picture like of the thing, and
Yeah.
Lester and Big Kevin, like if they would have been standing next to each other. And then the other gentleman, he drew a picture too. We didn't talk to each other for a few weeks. Different people interviewed us, and then after 2 weeks, we came together at a campfire and compared notes. And it was crazy like how similar our drawings were and our memories of everything that happened.
Mhm.
I think that was a really good way to handle that, was to like get our get our stories separately. But what I had drawn and what I thought it looked like was like a Christmas tree, almost like with a kind of rounded at the top instead of a really pointy top, but like that
Mhm.
was like sloping toward the top with shoulders. It
Yeah.
was, that's kind of what I drew. I didn't really see that I remember like legs or anything like that. It was just like this
Mhm.
bulky thing that was getting smaller, and his picture was very similar too. He had the shoulders and stuff. So, can I say exactly what it was? No, but what I know is that there have been several Bigfoot sightings in that area by police officers, by very credible people, and we
Yeah.
saw something really weird through that FLIR that I can't explain. So that was probably the most exciting experience I've had. I've heard some really strange things, like when I've been out in Mount Hood National Park in Oregon. I have um, heard some, what people call like big power wood knocks, whatever it was that was
Yeah.
making it. I don't know. Down in Kentucky, you and I were talking about Kentucky before. Um, but I really, I always say I'm the worst Bigfooter in the world because I go out a lot and I usually don't have anything happen. Um, but I'm also not going to lie about it. But I've had some
Yeah.
really strange things when we were in Oregon um, at that lake. We hiked in, we remote camped, hiked in several miles, set up camp, fished for our supper, all that. And we were hearing really strange whoops and just yells and noises. And the whole time we were there, we had only seen two people hike through, because it's a pretty several mile through hike in
Yeah.
that area. And so, could it be people out there? I can't rule that out, but we never saw any other human beings except that one day the couple that walked through, and it was just weird. We had set up, those were with people from the Olympic Project out that way,
Oh,
and
really?
they had set up a big perimeter of audio equipment, so they caught everything on there. We had put out those, they call them the Sasquatch pheromone chips. They're really like primate pheromones in a tree across the lake that we were
Mhm.
camped at. And that's where the really crazy screams and things were coming from. They weren't like a cougar scream. They put them through, Audacity software, didn't show up as any other
Yeah.
animal. And they found what looked like some like scuffed footprints over near that pheromone chip as well. So that was really exciting and scary, because you're like in the middle of the forest and
Yeah,
something's
Oregon's
out
very
there.
secluded.
Yeah, very secluded. So that was really fun, and I'd say pretty scary. And then I was up in Stevens County, Washington. We were filming a documentary up there, and we were hearing really, really weird noises, um, just from all over. And again, we were very primitive camping. Nobody up there. We had seen cougar tracks, really large
Yeah.
bear tracks. And so again, yeah, it's intimidating to be there, but a whole lot of fun.
Mhm. Anything can be intimidating if you're, in secluding spots.
Yeah,
Anything can happen, but I think being out in the field and researching these kinds of things, is very fun, and I
yeah,
enjoy it a lot.
me too. It's a lot. I mean, I just enjoy camping. I'm a Ohio certified volunteer naturalist, so I enjoy being outside. I enjoy
Yeah.
learning about animals and everything. So Bigfoot or no Bigfoot, I will always love camping. But when you're looking for something massive that could be out there with you, it is definitely scary and fun.
Yeah. There's tons of things that could be out there, and these things, in my opinion, could definitely be out there. Since I feel like if there wasn't no witnesses, like let's say there's maybe 15 to 20 witnesses ever reported,
Right.
then I would go more to the skeptical side. But with all of my, encounters and experiences, and looking through all the reports, and the how many do we get a year in the U.S.? Like, um, 5,000, more than that. Do you know?
I'm not sure of a number, but quite a few for sure. Yeah, I mean, there are thousands of reports out there, and I think you're right. Like, like I said, I'm not 100% convinced because I'm just the type of person I want to see it, with no doubt. But when I talk to different witnesses, because I take a lot of witness reports, one of the things I do is I go to outdoor shows like hunting and fishing shows,
Yeah.
and I set up there and I take reports. And the first one that I went to, I thought for sure people were gonna just laugh at me, and not that I really care, but I was like, nobody's gonna talk to me. And the night before it started, I had other vendors. We were setting up our booths. They were telling me their stories, and it was astounding how many people, how many hunters, how many fishermen say they have seen these things. And when I talk to them, and believe me, I know some people are hoaxers. I know people lie. I
Yeah.
know there can be misidentification. So, okay, but, whittle all that down. And even if you have a handful or whatever of people really being sincere, these guys, mostly men, sometimes women, they're out in the woods a lot, and they've been doing this their whole life. And you talk to, like, there was one time I was doing the outdoor show in Monroeville, Pennsylvania, and there was
Yeah.
an older gentleman who came up to myself and my research partner, Tina Sams, and he talked to us a little bit, and then he left, and then he came back. And that happens a lot. Like, people aren't sure whether they want to say anything. And finally, he kind of took us aside and he was telling us his story. And you could see that emotion on his face where
Mhm.
this wasn't a joke to him, and he was telling us about how the first day of deer season used to be his Christmas. Like, it was what he looked forward to his whole year, and he loved hunting and being in the woods. And then he said one day he saw something he couldn't explain, and he says that something was a Sasquatch, and it didn't hurt him, but it intimidated him so badly and scared him so badly he never goes in the woods anymore. And he said he still goes to these outdoor shows and he still buys equipment, but he can't bring himself to go out there where this thing, as he called it,
Yeah.
is. So when you're talking to someone like that and it's really had an impact on their life, it's very hard to say, okay, yeah, these aren't real. So those are the days when I talk to somebody like that, you feel that emotion from them and you're like, okay, they're real.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think that's a really good idea to go to hunting events or venues because most of the people who witness these things are hunters,
Hmm.
outdoorsmen, or scientists that are, outdoors.
Hmm. No, you're
And
right, and it's I was very lucky. I had a friend who had been asked to set up a booth at that Monroeville show, and he couldn't do it that year. And he's like, I'm probably not going to do this. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, yeah. And again, I didn't know how it was going to be received, but I, before COVID, kept canceling it or keeps canceling it because it just got canceled again for this year. I was going each year, and one year between that show and another one in Ohio, we got 87 new reports from people who
wow.
had never told their story before. And again, could some of them been lying? Sure. But even if, I'm not the first one to say this, but even if one of them is true, then that's amazing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of people who haven't told their story because they think they're going to get laughed at.
Yeah. My biggest excuse for people that are completely skeptical, well, it's not really an excuse, but my biggest, comment on people who laugh at me is that they don't know because they're not out like we are.
Right, and they've never really looked into it, I think. I've talked to so many different people, including a lot of scientists who had initially been super skeptical. And it's not that they're Bigfoot believers now, but they will always tell me, like when I tell them about the different footprint evidence and when I tell them about the audio and witness reports and stuff, to a person, they all have said, I had no idea. I had no idea that there was all of
Mhm.
this going on. I never looked into it before. It just sounds stupid. I'm interested, So I think you're exactly right. They're not out there experiencing things for themselves and they've never looked into it.
Yeah, and people underestimate this field of research, and
Hmm.
it's just you really, if you're really interested, or if you're really wondering about it, is what I'm trying to say. If you're skeptical, but if you're really, you know, confused, I'd say the best thing to do is find a group, find someone to go out in the woods with, and do some techniques, and just have your own experiences. That's the best thing to do, really.
Yeah, I agree.
What are your thoughts on, you know, the paranormal side of Bigfoot?
Well, I get asked that a lot. And what I will say is, I think that if we're going to have an open mind about Bigfoot's existence at all, and if we're going to say, okay, people shouldn't just dismiss it, then I feel that I at least can't dismiss reports of things that are really highly unusual or strange. Because, first of all, I have really good friends who research Bigfoot as well, and they absolutely do it more from a paranormal angle.
Yeah.
And I respect them. I respect their methods. I respect the time that they put in it. I don't see it that way. I am definitely a science girl, if you want to see it that way.
Yeah.
But, but I feel that a lot of things that people say are paranormal just might not have an explanation yet. And my example that I always give is there's that movie from a while back called The Gods Must Be Crazy, where it's set, with this very remote tribe in Africa, I believe, and there's a plane that flies over them. They've never seen a plane before, and they drop I think it was a Coke bottle, either Coke or Pepsi, sorry, but I think it was a Coke bottle out of the plane, and these people are like, "What is this? It's a gift of the gods," and it's like, should they worship it? What should they do with it? Is it a bad omen? And it's just a Coke bottle, right? But they don't
Mhm.
know because they've never had that experience. So I feel sometimes I think that there could be a a logical, like, scientific explanation for something. Like if somebody says the Bigfoot disappeared, could it be the way the light's reflecting on the fur? Could they just be really quick? It could be something simple like that.
Yeah.
Or could it be something we just don't know how to explain yet? I don't know, but I definitely don't dismiss people and I never make fun of people. The only person I've ever made fun of that told me a story about Bigfoot is somebody told me that Bigfoot stole his aunt's beer out of her garage, and then I had to laugh. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Something like that. But and who knows, maybe Bigfoot did. But no, I don't know. I what I will say is, again, I don't know what Bigfoot is because I don't even know if they're real. I think that they are, but if Bigfoot is something paranormal, that would still be really cool and interesting. It's just not my area of interest. So if somebody proved to me that Bigfoot is 100% paranormal, then I probably wouldn't be interested in it anymore because
Yeah.
I love animals and I want to see, could there be an undiscovered or undocumented primate in North America. So if it is paranormal, then I'll let everybody else look for it, but it's just not my area of interest.
Yeah. I want the same thing. I don't know what to believe yet because I haven't really. There's only a couple like articles or reports that I've listened or tuned into, and I just don't know what to believe because there's so many reports that contain, it just disappeared, you know.
Hmm.
And then there's
Hmm.
some that just I've read or seen tons of reports where you could see through it, but then see it.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. Sometimes I'll get somebody who like wants to argue that they had a Bigfoot experience in the forest because something touched them or something this or that, and I'm always like, well, if you didn't see it, why does that have to be Bigfoot? Like, could it be some other weird ghost activity or something? Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know why that has to be Bigfoot, like why they relate the two things. But sometimes, like what you're saying, they see what they think is Bigfoot, and then it has some kind of weirdness around it. So I don't know. I don't think we should dismiss it out of hand. I've been involved in some other groups early on when I was interested in this that just dismissed that out of hand, and I don't think that's good science. You should go where evidence leads you, and
Yeah.
so if if you can find evidence for something like that, then let it be.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah. I definitely lean towards the more flesh and blood side because I think that's the more reasonable, and I'd rather have that. I mean, I don't want to someday say, that it's or someday have it proven real, and then they say, "Oh, it's paranormal involved."
Yeah,
I don't really want that. I want more of a primate, flesh and blood
sure, that would be
animal.
awesome, wouldn't it? I think I have met people where my opinion is that they get tired of waiting for a primate to show up. So They go to the woo, if you want to call it that, or more paranormal side because it can be more exciting for them, and they can, say they've had these experiences. I'm not saying everybody at all, but I know personally some people that that's what seems to have happened, like they've lost their patience.
Yeah.
Because the fact is, if this is a real animal, you might never see one. You think about like the Cross River gorillas over in Africa, where people have looked for years and come up short of seeing them or finding them. Finally, they were documented. But
Mhm.
animals can hide really well, and especially an intelligent one, and especially if there is a pretty low breeding population of them, which I think could be the case. I don't know, but I think that could be the case. You have somebody like Peter Byrne who has been looking for Bigfoot like his whole life and been interested in this topic and put hours and money in it and has never
Yeah.
seen one. I feel like you have to be prepared, and I personally feel like I'm prepared to go my whole life looking and never finding one. And I'm okay with that. I want to see one. I want them to be real, but I might never know that in my lifetime. And just because it gets frustrating doesn't mean I'm gonna like say, okay, it must be paranormal.
Yeah. That's a lot more, reasonable. What do you think about infrasound?
Infrasound is really interesting. We know that different animals can make infrasound. Tigers, whales, right? Um, Different animals can do that to kind of manipulate their prey and the circumstance.
Yeah.
People will say that they've had these experiences where there was a Sasquatch and they felt paralyzed and afraid and all these things. So I don't really know what to think about it. I know that when I have been, especially like when I'm where there are mountain lions and stuff, I can be terrified at times where nothing has to stun me with infrasound to make me feel like I'm frozen.
Yeah.
Like it's just the creepy circumstances. That's just me though. Um, I don't know. I find it very interesting and I'm not discounting it. I don't know if a Bigfoot could do that or not. I don't think we know of any I don't think we know of any other primates that could do anything like that. But who knows?
Yeah,
Never say
there's
never.
there's some people who think, they're more human-like, and then there's some people who think they're canine. I know tigers have infrasound,
Mhm. Yep.
and I know from my own experience that infrasound comes with an illness
Mhm.
and not just a shock. When I got it, I wasn't really shocked. I got super sick after I,
Mm.
looked at something.
Yeah, so your story then is one of those really interesting ones that is and you're a good example of why people have that hypothesis.
Yeah. And it was more of a protective, defensive
Mhm.
kind of thing that it was the reason why it happened.
Right. Well, that would be scary, I think.
Yeah, I don't think they abuse it. I think they just use it when they feel threatened or want to, make sure that they're in the safe
Right. That would make
because
sense, right? That would make sense. If they could, if they have it, if they have that ability, then that would make sense.
yeah, ever since then it's only happened once, and then I've had plenty of activity, and I've been around them multiple times, and it hasn't happened. And it's happened to a lot of people that I know, and a lot of
Mhm.
people that did the same thing I did. So it's
Yeah. No,
crazy how they have that ability.
I've heard people say that. So no, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think different people have different, you know, reactions to it.
Sure.
Like I said, some people just get frozen in shock, and I think that's just because they don't believe what they see.
Right.
That, or I think the illness side is more of the infrasound. You
Gotcha.
know, it just
That makes sense.
hits you, and I don't know. I think from what I've heard before is infrasound is anything below like 20 hertz of volume.
That sounds right. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just a lot of things. And infrasound is, it's nothing paranormal. If any guys are that are listening wondering, it's
It's very real, very
yeah,
real.
if tigers can have it and if cats and other animals can have it, then certainly a primate
It's a
can have it.
possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a witness that told me his story where it wasn't like that, like he got sick or anything, but he had this kind of sense of dread, and he said it just came out of nowhere, and I kind of always wondered if that was one of those stories, but he had he was a wildlife exterminator here in Ohio,
Mm.
and so he really knew animals. Again, he was out culling coyotes on some property, and he said that he saw a white Bigfoot and that it was small, like about 4 foot, so young, and that it kind of, he said, it almost seemed to be playing like a cat and mouse game with him. Like it would it would come out into the open more, kind of go back and forth, sway back and forth on its feet, and then it would disappear into the trees, and then it would be a little further back on the trail. So he would follow it, and he said he felt kind of like it was trying to get him to follow it, and then all of a sudden he was like, okay, what am I doing? And he got this really overwhelming, I don't remember him saying he felt like nauseated or anything, but this overwhelming, like bad
Mhm.
feeling. And so I always wondered if that was just the circumstances or if something like that had happened to him. I'm not sure.
I wanna bring up the you said it was white
Yes,
and it was 4 foot tall.
yes.
So
And
what I've heard and read that there's not as many white haired encounters, but people think that if they're white, then it's just like us humans. Once we get older, our hair gets white.
yeah, I think from what I've heard, just because I have heard several stories about the white ones, and they have been like smaller to bigger. I feel like maybe it's just some kind of a recessive gene or something. Because we have a lot compared to the rest of the country in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and I actually do more of my personal research in Pennsylvania than Ohio. But there are quite a few white sightings, and they run the gamut of sizes. So, I mean, of course, I don't know. I mean, maybe they do, you know, change hair color. I'm not sure, but that one that he saw was definitely, he said it would have been a juvenile, and this guy was not into Bigfoot at all. He was like trying to make sense of this, and he got a really decent and long look at it, and he's like, was there some kind of a primate that escaped from like an exotic petting zoo or something around
Yeah.
there? But it was nothing he'd ever seen before. And he even, when it was a little further away at first and it got closer, he started to raise his gun up because he wanted to see it through the scope, and then it didn't react. So he's like, this isn't somebody dressed up, this isn't, not that he was going to shoot it, he just wanted to see it better. And
Yeah.
he's like, this is just crazy. His was one of my favorite stories I've heard. But he said it was definitely small.
Yeah, that just kind of that's the first time I've heard anything like that.
And what
Cause
was really interesting, do you mind if I finish this part, or do you want
oh,
to?
go ahead.
Okay, sorry. What was really interesting about it, so he had that sighting. Well, I met another guy who was telling me his story, that he had gone to this spot he was hunting, and he found these very small footprints where he said it was like it was, why would there be a kid here? Because they were like in the middle of all these briars and stuff out in the middle of nowhere. And it ended up that his sighting and this other guy's sighting, they didn't know of each other. They had no idea.
Mhm.
Happened within like a quarter to a half mile of each other around that same time. So, and he showed me the pictures of the footprints and stuff. And it was really cool to have two different, you know, stories that you can put together and make a story of that area.
Yeah. I've just never heard of them being white but young.
Yeah.
Always thought if they were white, they were older. So that
No,
definitely
I don't know.
debunks that theory for me of
Well,
them.
it's definitely, I mean, it's something to think about. I wouldn't necessarily say it debunks it, but I get what you're saying, but it definitely goes against that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say is basically, that's not the only reason why they have white hair.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like it.
Yeah, which is there's so much to learn about them until they're, scientifically proven,
Hmm.
and I don't think we'll ever learn, all about them ever,
Right.
depending on how
Uh,
elusive and how, big they are.
right. I always say that I'm not pro kill. I would never condone like somebody going out and shooting one. I wouldn't shoot one, but I feel like a body is what it's going to take if if the end goal is to prove it to science, and I'm not sure if that is the end goal, but if it is, then that's what it's going to take. But, you know, I always say I hope I come across one that died peacefully in its sleep. So you know that it's real.
Yeah, I would never kill one. I
No.
would say two bodies would prove it, and then we're done. We're not killing anymore.
Yeah.
Because if we get that, look from them that we're just there to kill them, then we're not gonna get to do what we do anymore, and they're gonna become a threat to
Right.
us.
Right.
So yeah, and there's theories where people say, well, if you ever shoot one, you won't make it out alive because the others would make sure you pay for it,
Yeah. That's I've heard that too.
which definitely makes sense because of how intelligent they are.
Hmm.
So, and I think a body's what it need because we've already, collected tons of hairs with DNA on them, and they always come back, unidentified or unclassified or primate, but not classified primate. So I think it's really gonna take a body
Yeah, I
to
agree.
scientifically prove it. What all vocal encounters have you had?
Well, like I said, I'm part of the Olympic project, and even though they're based out in Washington State, I'm kind of a satellite, I guess, and I get out there as much as I can. But they have really good audio um, database that they've collected, um, uh, just all kinds of different things that they've shared with me. Um, and you have David Ellis, you have Chris Spencer out there that like
Yeah.
actively try to get the audio, or people give them the audio. You have Monongahela over here on the East Coast that's doing a lot of cool audio stuff, and it's my favorite part really of Bigfooting, because when you have sounds that just can't be classified under any other known animal, I find that really compelling. Now, I always
Yeah.
say, maybe it's just a sound from a known animal that we haven't documented yet. There's always that possibility. But when you have these sounds coming out of areas where there's always also sightings, and there are also um, footprints, that have been cast, it makes a really compelling argument that it could be something like a Sasquatch. Um,
Mhm.
but, you know, when we were out at that spot in Oregon, it was just like a lot of the things that we picked up, we listened to later. Like it would happen when we were sleeping, so we didn't necessarily hear it. Or what was interesting is that there were four of us there, and like I said, we would fish for our supper. We would like be collecting firewood. We would take these like little day hikes. So oftentimes when we would leave the area, there would be these big knocks that would sound, or these like
Yeah.
yells that would go on. And then when we were about to come back to the area, that would happen again. And because you could hear us, like we would say to the audio recorders, we'd be like, we're leaving, and then we would come back and we're like, we're back, so that that would be documented. And it was crazy. Like something was intelligently saying, okay, they're leaving, okay, they're coming back. Whether it was Bigfoot or not, I don't know, but something was doing that. And then just these crazy yells and whoops and hollers and stuff that would happen, a lot of wood knocks. So it was just alive with that kind of thing. And I had
Yeah.
never experienced that before. And I remember sitting there and thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is real. Like this is really happening, because there was nobody that knew where we were. Um, Very unlikely that there were other people right in that area, but again, there's enough of a skeptic in me that I can't say it's Bigfoot doing it unless I see it. But wow, it was really pretty convincing.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite recorded audios is Matt Moneymaker's Ohio How that he got,
Mhm.
and the Sierra Whoops.
Mhm.
Those really just stand out to me because they're so clean and crisp, and it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've been down to Wellsville several times. Go through there to a campground. Often that's near where Matt had recorded that Ohio Howl, and it's something I've never heard myself. I know people who say they've heard it. Well, one time I did hear it and I was so excited, and then found out it was my friend doing it. I was so
Oh,
mad. I'm like, I'm so mad at you. But he had tried to like say it through the walkie, but didn't realize that that hadn't come through. But yeah, I've never heard that, but like that is a dream of mine to hear that, because
same.
I almost feel like it would be just as exciting to hear something crazy like that as it would be to see something.
Yeah, 'cause the only two animals that I know that could make that deep of a vocal and that loud of a vocal is either humans or Sasquatches,
Hmm.
and
I
that's
agree.
just it. How long and deep it is, it's incredible. I've yet to hear it like in person, like while I'm out, but I would just love to just hear it in person while I'm out squatching one night.
Me too. Me too. It's fun with audio. I get a lot of audio sent to me, and what I always say is that 80% at least of the audio I get sent to me that people think is Bigfoot, you can tell pretty quickly is a fox. You get coyote, fox make a lot of weird noises. You know that, I'm sure, and people are like, "Oh, this
Yeah,
is weird." So you can figure it out pretty quickly. You get used to these sounds. You can look at the Macaulay Library of Sound online. Um, or I ask hunters or people that know more than I do, what could this be? And I remember my favorite one, it was really, I always get disappointed, like I feel like it's my responsibility to try to figure out anything else these things could be, instead of saying, oh, that's Bigfoot, but I want it to be. So whenever I
yeah.
figure something else out, I get kind of disappointed, but then I'm like, okay, it's all right, move on. But one time I got one sent to me that was really weird. I'd never heard it before. It was coming from near Wampum, Pennsylvania, and I did not know what the sound was. And I started researching. I couldn't figure it out. Asking people, couldn't figure it out. Finally, I found out. You kind of have to do some detective work. So I'm like, okay, well, what's going on this time of year? What's happening? Realized that it was during bear season, like bow and arrow hunting
Yeah.
season, and looked up some different things and found out it was like black bear death moans, which was really sad. But this was so loud and crazy sounding, and it one report came in the one area, and then somebody like a mile away reported it that same night. So I I I don't I was sad that the bear was dying, but I find it
Mhm.
really fun and interesting to try to figure out the puzzle. And there's very few times where someone has given me something or I've come up with something myself because I have different audio equipment out um, in my spot. I call it, all of us Bigfooters, we have a spot. So I have one out in the Allegheny National Forest.
Yeah.
And I've had some interesting sounds, but nothing like super cool. But that bear was the one that I was kind of proudest for finally figuring out.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of crazy sounds, but I have one howl that I got on recording
Hmm.
that I wanted to just test it out. I'm just gonna play it into my microphone off my phone. If you want to
Okay.
listen to it real quick, I don't know if it's gonna pick up good or not, but yeah, this was October of the last year, well this year, but yeah, October 9th. I was out with my cousin at the property. I don't know if you've seen all my footprints yet.
Mm-mm, not yet.
Yeah, I'll have to send them to you. But this is the property where I've got three different size footprints: a huge one, a medium sized one, and a small one.
Nice.
So I'm gonna play it. Could you
Well,
hear it?
actually, I did. That's actually interesting.
Yeah, I'd say that was probably 100 yards away,
Huh.
and it was probably on the other side of, because I have this huge cornfield. It's probably close to a half mile long.
Nice.
Yeah, and there's surrounding woods a lot, and it all connects to. And I know you're up north, but it connects to a state park where we've had 3 or 4 BFRO reports
Hmm.
of East Fork State Park, and the woods are kind of sectional, lines.
Right.
And with only a few roads and fields separating it, it kind of connects to East Fork. And there's months where they're active, and there's months where they're not active at all,
Right.
which
Yeah,
is
that was definitely interesting. Like, it didn't sound like a coyote to me. I would like look into if somebody had sent me that, I would look into like different birds and things like that around there. But it really didn't sound like that. Obviously, I couldn't hear it super well, and I am not an expert in sounds or anything. But that's cool. That's cool.
yeah. And I hear coyotes here almost every night. And around here, I haven't heard like a long coyote howl for some reason. I've only heard a pack that's just like yipping and barking.
Right.
I've never heard a long, what people have heard, the long coyote
Yeah.
howls.
It's fun when you do hear them. I was
And
down in Kentucky that one time
yeah,
and going along this dirt road that had some gravel on it back to this old church that was in the middle of the woods. And we had, it was me and several other women, and we had coyotes that were like a pack of them that would like run alongside us on one side. So then we start back and they're running alongside us on the other side, just howling and again, a little intimidating, but it was pretty cool.
yeah. I've been out one night. Um, it was actually this year's end of September, I think. We were at um, we were on a trail, and I spotted a single coyote up on the top of the ridge, and
Yeah,
then about a minute later, it did one of those long coyote howls.
that's fun.
yeah, it was pretty. It's pretty cool to hear 'em.
Yep.
And then it just ran off. I don't know why it ran off, but yeah. I've also here. I'll show you these whistles. I'm thinking 60% bird. You know, other Sasquatch. It's just it sounds like a bird, but at the same time it sounds like a human. You know,
Hmm.
like what would you do with a whistle? And this was okay. So this was October 13th at. Hold on, let me find the time. 2:47 a.m. Could you hear it?
Yeah, I could hear the whistle. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's a bird or not because it sounds like birds are more. They don't really they chirp, and it's a clean. It's the same pitch and volume throughout the chirp. This
Yeah,
was
it
more of
does.
a whistle that went low to high, and
Right.
it did it 3 times in 3 sets.
Yeah, it's cool. Definitely something to look into.
Yeah, and then I keep a audio recorder out on this trail 2 days at a time, and I go through it, and I just find tons of stuff, tons of maybes,
Hmm.
tons of knocks, and everything. But yeah, I love vocals is one of my expertise. That and footprints, I love footprints.
Yeah. It's just cool, like when you put different audio into different software and it can show you like a picture of what that sound looks like and show you the different frequencies and that a coyote makes or a person or a bird or whatever, and you see the picture of something that doesn't fit anything like that. It's just
Yeah.
kind of exciting.
Yep. I love just setting audio recorders out and just going through it. It's like opening Christmas presents.
Yes, it is. Takes a long time too, but it's fun.
Yep. Well, it's been an hour. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. It was fun.
Yeah, I really liked hearing your encounters and your stories and witnesses stories.
Thank you. It was fun, and good luck to you with your podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yep,
Maybe we'll get you on sometime another in
I'd
the
love it.
future.
Sure, you got it.
You, maybe someone else too.
Sure.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. And is it okay if I put your Facebook in the description?
Absolutely. Yep. And just real quick also, if there's anybody out there who is a scientist or knows of any that are interested in Bigfoot, I'm the co-founder of a group called Project Zoobook where we have a lot of different scientists involved in this, and you are welcome to contact me at bigfootamy@gmail.com or get a hold of Toby and love to talk to you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate you because I just started this. This is my third one. I only have, I think the most I've gotten is 20 views.
Just
I
keep
mean,
at it. Keep at it.
it's growing definitely because
Yeah.
I went my first podcast. It was like 13 views, and now we're up to 20. So it's definitely
Yeah,
slowly,
good.
but it's getting there. I
Keep
really
at it.
appreciate you stepping up.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thanks again, and yeah, have a good night.
You too. Thanks, Toby.
Yep.